आज हम स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं 12th का फर्स्ट चैप्टर रिप्रोडक्शन इन ऑर्गेनिज्म. ठीक है. Each and every organism can live only for a certain period of time. The period from birth to the natural death of an organism represents its lifespan. Lifespan of few organisms are given in figure 11.1. 11.1 में दिया हुआ है. Several other organisms are drawn for which you should find out their lifespan and write in the spaces provided. ठीक है. अब जो इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट है बस यही यहाँ पे बताता हूँ, है ना. लाइफ स्पैन ऑफ एन ऑर्गेनिज्म आर नॉट नेसेसरली को रिलेटेड विद देयर साइज. मतलब लाइफ स्पैन जो ऑर्गेनिज्म का होता है उसकी साइज़ से उसका कोई रिलेशन नहीं है. मतलब कि क्रो और पैरट जो है दोनों एक साइज़ के हैं, लेकिन दोनों के लाइफ स्पैन में बहुत ज़्यादा फ़र्क होता है. ठीक है. अब नेक्स्ट, वट एवर बी द लाइफ स्पैन, डेथ ऑफ एवरी इंडिविजुअल ऑर्गेनिज्म इज सर्टेनिटी. No individual is immortal except single cell organism. Why do we say there is no natural death in single cell organism? बोलते हैं कि सिंगल सेल ऑर्गेनिज्म में नेचुरल डेथ क्यों नहीं होता है? क्योंकि वो क्या है ना, एक सिंगल सेल दो में टूट जाता है, वो मरता नहीं है, वो डिवाइड कर रहा है यहाँ पे. ठीक है. देयर मस्ट बी सम प्रोसेस इन द लिविंग ऑर्गेनिजम्स दैट इंश्योर दिस कंटिन्यूटी. यस, वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट रिप्रोडक्शन, समथिंग दैट वी टेकन फॉर ग्रांटेड. ठीक है. अब इतने में हम लोग क्या इंपॉर्टेंट पढ़े कि लाइफ स्पैन ऑफ एन ऑर्गेनिज्म आर नॉट नेसेसरली कोरिलेटेड विद देयर साइज. द पीरियड फ्रॉम बर्थ टू द नेचुरल डेथ ऑफ एन ऑर्गेनिज्म रिप्रेजेंट्स लाइफ स्पैन. नेक्स्ट, नो इंडिविजुअल इज इमॉर्टल एक्सेप्ट सिंगल सेल ऑर्गेनिज्म. अब आगे जो हम लोग पढ़ेंगे वो है आपका लाइफ स्पैन. एलिफेंट का 65 to 90 ईयर्स, रोज 5 to 7 ईयर्स, डॉग 20 to 30, cow 15 to 25 years, banana tree 20 to 25 years, horse 62 years, rice plant 3 to 4 month, banyan tree 200 to 300 year, fruit fly 20 to 30 days, butterfly 1 to 2 week, crow 15 year, parrot 140 year, crocodile 60 year, tortoise 100 to 150 year. ठीक है. अब नेक्स्ट हम लोग पेज नंबर 5 पे. Reproduction is defined as a biological process in which an organism gives rise to young ones या offspring similar to itself. The offspring grow, mature and in turn produces new offspring. Thus there is a cycle of birth, growth and death. Reproduction enables the continuity of species generation after generation. ये important है ना, आया हुआ है. You will study later in chapter 5 principle of inheritance and variation, how genetic variation is created and inherited during reproduction. There is a large diversity in the biological world and each organism has evolved its own mechanism to multiply and produce offspring. ठीक है. The organism's habitat, its internal physiology and several other factors are collectively responsible for how it reproduces. Based on whether there is a participation of one organism or two in the process of reproduction, it is of two types. क्या क्या? When offspring is produced by single parent with or without the involvement of with or without the involvement of gamete formation, the reproduction is asexual. And when two parents opposite sex participate in the reproductive process and also involve fusion of male and female gamete, it is called sexual reproduction. अब हम लोग आते हैं नेक्स्ट जो 1.1 है asexual reproduction में. In this method, a single individual or parent is capable of producing offspring. As a result, the offspring that are produced are not only identical to one another but are also exact copies of their parent. ठीक है. तो और ये जो कॉपी होते हैं इनके लिए टर्म यूज किया जाता है क्लोन. द टर्म क्लोन इज यूज टू डिस्क्राइब सर्म मॉर्फोलॉजिकली एंड जेनेटिकली सिमिलर इंडिविजुअल्स. अब देखो, सेल डिवीजन इन यूनिसेलुलर ऑर्गेनिज्म कौन कौन सा है? बडिंग होता है ईस्ट में, बाइंडरी फ्यूजन होता है अमीबा में. अब नेक्स्ट, asexual reproduction is common among single cell organisms and in plants and animals with relatively simple organization. In protists and monerans, the organism or the parent cell divide into two to give rise to new individual. Thus, in these organisms, cell division is itself a mode of reproduction. नेक्स्ट हम लोग आएंगे पेज नंबर 6 पे. पेज नंबर 6 पे सबसे पहले एग्जाम्पल देखेंगे. जू स्पोर्स ऑफ क्लेमाइडोमोनास, कोनिडिया ऑफ पेनिसिलियम, बर्ड्स इन हाइड्रा, गैम्यूल्स इन स्पॉन्जेस. ठीक है. Many single cell organisms reproduce by binary fusion, where a cell divide into two halves and each rapidly grow into an adult. Example, amoeba, paramecium. In yeast, the division is unequal and small buds are produced that remain attached initially to the parent cell, which eventually get separated and mature into new yeast. ठीक है. Under unfavorable condition, the amoeba withdraws its pseudopodia and secrete a three-layered hard covering or cyst around itself. The phenomenon is termed as incestation. इंसिस्टेशन क्या है अभी हम लोग देख लिए, ये इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है, याद रखना है. व्हेन फेवरेबल कंडीशन रिटर्न, द insisted amoeba divide by multiple fission and produce many minute amoeba or pseudopodiospores. The cyst wall bursts out and spores are liberated in the surrounding medium to grow up into many amoeba. This phenomena is called sporulation. यहाँ तीन चीज़ हम लोग देखना था. एक बाइंड्री फिजन किस में होता है, अमीबा और पैरामीशियम में. इंसिस्टेशन क्या होता है और स्पोरुलेशन क्या होता है. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट पेज पे आते हैं हम लोग, पेज नंबर 7 पे, है ना. पेज नंबर 7 पे सबसे पहले फिर एग्जांपल हम लोग देखेंगे. आइज ऑफ पोटैटो, राइजोम ऑफ जिंजर, बल्बिल ऑफ अगेव, लीफ बर्ड्स ऑफ ब्रायोफाइलम, ऑफसेट ऑफ वाटर हाइसिंथ. अब यहाँ क्या बोल रहा है. मेंबर ऑफ किंगडम फंगी एंड सिंपल प्लांट्स सच एज एल्गी reproduce through a special asexual reproductive structure. The most common of these structure are zoospores that usually are microscopic motile structure. Other common asexual reproductive structures are conidia of penicillium, buds of hydra and gamules of sponges. Next, while in animals and other simple organisms the term asexual is used unambiguously, in plants the term vegetative reproduction is frequently used. In plants, the unit of vegetative propagation such as runner, rhizome, sucker, tuber, offset, bulb are all capable of giving rise to new offspring. These structures are called vegetative propagules. अब आते हैं हम लोग नेक्स्ट पेज नंबर 8 पे. पेज नंबर 8 पे, obviously since the formation of these structures does not involve two parents, the process involved is asexual. In some organism, if the body breaks into distinct pieces, यानी कि fragments, each fragment grow into an adult capable of producing offspring. Example, hydra. This is the mode of asexual reproduction called fragmentation. तो fragmentation किस में हुआ, हाइड्रा में. You must have heard about the scourge of water bodies. ये क्वेश्चन आया हुआ है. scourge of water bodies or about the terror of Bengal. ये क्या है, water hyacinth, which is one of the most invasive breed found wherever there is standing water. It drains oxygen from the water which led to death of fishes. ठीक है. अब ये प्लांट को इंट्रोड्यूस क्यों किया गया था. दिस प्लांट वॉज इंट्रोड्यूस्ड इन इंडिया बिकॉज ऑफ इट्स ब्यूटीफुल फ्लावर इन शेप ऑफ लीव्स. ठीक है. सिंस इट कैन प्रोपगेट वेजिटेटिवली एट अ फिनोमिनल रेट and spread all over the water body in a short period of time, it is very difficult to get rid of them. Are you aware about plants like potato, sugarcane, banana, ginger, dahlia? Have you seen small plants emerging from the buds, eyes of potato, rhizome of banana and ginger? ठीक है. Origin of new plantlets from nodes. New plantlets कहाँ से arise करते हैं, nodes से, है ना. Present in the modified stem. Site of origin of new plantlets क्या था, nodes. Next, adventitious buds arise from notches present at the margin of leaves of bryophyllum. Asexual reproduction is common method of reproduction in organisms that have relatively simple organization like algae and fungi. Algae and fungi shift to sexual method of reproduction just before the onset of adverse condition. Sexual reproduction involves formation of male and female gametes either by same individual or by different individual of opposite sex. अब इसमें तीन जो इम्पोर्टेंट था वो क्या था, हाइड्रा का फ्रेगमेंटेशन राइजोम, बनाना एंड जिंजर में होता है, और एडवेंटिशियस बर्ड्स जो होता है वो ब्रायोफाइलम में होता है. ठीक है. अब नेक्स्ट पेज हम लोग 9 में देखते हैं. जो भी इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है बस वही देख रहे हैं हम लोग, है ना. पूरा एनसीईआरटी कवर होगा. द पीरियड फ्रॉम ग्रोथ यानी फ्रॉम बर्थ टू सेक्सुअल मैच्योरिटी is called juvenile phase. It is known as vegetative phase in plants. The end of juvenile phase or vegetative phase marks the beginning of reproductive phase. The annual and biennial type show clearest vegetative, reproductive and senescent phase. But in perennial species, it is very difficult to clearly define these phases. Bamboo species flowers only once in their lifetime, generally after 50 to 100 years. अस्टोबलेंथस कुंथियाना, जिसको हम लोग बोलते हैं नील कुरंजी, फ्लावर्स वंस इन 12 ईयर. Nilkurenji in hilly areas in Kerala, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu converted converted the whole region into a blue stretches. ठीक है. In animals, the juvenile phase is followed by morphological and physiological changes prior to the active reproductive behavior. The female of the placental mammal exhibits cyclical changes in the activities of ovaries and accessory duct as well as hormones during the reproductive phase. In non-primates, cyclical change during the reproductive phase is called oestrus cycle. In primates, cyclical change during the reproductive phase is called menstrual cycle. Seasonal breeders get reproductive phase during favorable seasons. ठीक है. Seasonal breeders are reproductively active throughout their reproductive phase and hence called continuous breeders. ठीक है. The end of reproductive phase can be considered as one of the parameters of senescent or old age. ठीक है. There are concomitant changes in the body like slowing of metabolism etc. During this last phase of lifespan, old age ultimately leads to death. In both plants and animals, hormones are responsible for the transition between the three phases. Interaction between hormones and certain environmental factors regulate the reproductive process and the associated behavior expansion of the organism. Events in sexual reproduction. After attainment of the maturity, all sexually reproducing organisms exhibit events and processes that have remarkable fundamental similarity, even though the structures associated with the sexual reproduction are indeed very different. The event of sexual reproduction, through elaborate and complex, follow a regular sequence. Sexual reproduction is characterized by fusion or fertilization of male and female gametes, the formation of zygote and embryogenesis. For convenience, this sequence event may be grouped into three distinct stages, namely pre-fertilization, fertilization, and post-fertilization event. Pre-fertilization events. These includes all the events of the sexual reproduction prior to the fusion. Prior मतलब fusion से पहले of gametes. The two main pre-fertilization events are gametogenesis and gamete transfer. तो पहला topic gametogenesis. Gametogenesis refers to the process of formation of two types of gametes, male and female. Gametes are haploid cells. In some algae, the two gametes are so similar in appearance that it is not possible to categorize them into male and female gametes. They are hence called homogametes or isogametes. However, in majority of sexually reproducing organisms, the gamete produced are of two morphologically distinct types, that is heterogametes. In such organisms, the male gamete is called antherozoid or sperm and the female gamete is called egg or ovum. Sexuality and organism. Sexual reproduction in organism generally involves the fusion of gametes from two different individuals, but it is not always true. From your recollection of examples studied in class 11, can you identify cases where self-fertilization is observed? Of course, citing such example in plant is easy. Plant may have both male and female reproductive structure in the same plant, bisexual, or on the different plant, unisexual. In several fungi and plants, terms such as homothelic and monoecious are used to denote the bisexual condition, and heterothelic and dioecious are the terms used to describe unisexual condition. In flowering plants, the unisexual male flower is staminate, example bearing stamens, while the female is pistillate or bearing pistil. In some flowering plants, both male and female flowers may be present on the same individual, monoecious, or on the separate individual, dioecious. Some example of monoecious plants are cucurbit and coconut, and of dioecious plant are papaya and date palm. But what about animals? Are individuals of all species either male or female unisexual? Or are there species which possess both the reproductive organs bisexual? You probably can make a list of the several unisexual animal species: earthworm, sponges, tapeworm, and leech. Typical example of bisexual animals that possess both male and female reproductive organs are hermaphrodites. Cockroach is an example of unisexual species. Cell division during gamete formation. Gametes in all the heterogametic species are of two types, namely male and female. Gametes are haploid, though the plant body from where they arise may be either haploid or diploid. A haploid parent produces gametes by mitotic division. Does this mean that the meiosis never occur in the organism that are haploid? Carefully examine the flow chart of the life cycle of algae. एल्गी में क्या होता है कि डिप्लॉयड पेरेंट होता है, उसमें मियोसिस होता है और गैमेट बनता है हैप्लॉयड, है ना. Several organisms belonging to Monera, fungi, algae and bryophytes have haploid plant body. But in organisms belonging to pteridophyte, gymnosperm, angiosperm and most of the animals, including human beings, the parental body is diploid. It is obvious that meiosis, the reduction division, has to occur if a diploid body has to produce haploid gamete. Next page, पेज नंबर 12. इसमें एग्जाम्पल है कुछ जो इंपॉर्टेंट है. बाइसेक्सुअल एनिमल अर्थवॉर्म, यूनिसेक्सुअल एनिमल कॉकरोच, मोनोसियस प्लांट चारा, डायसियस प्लांट मार्केंटिया, बाइसेक्सुअल फ्लावर स्वीट पोटैटो. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट पेज नंबर 13. ह्यूमन बींग्स में क्रोमोसोम नंबर इन मियोसाइट यानी डिप्लॉयड नंबर कितना है 46, हाउस फ्लाई 12, रैट 42, डॉग 78, कैट 38, फ्रूट फ्लाई 8 और ये जो फर्न है एक, ठीक है, इसमें 1260, एप्पल 34, राइस 24, मेज 20, पोटैटो 48, बटरफ्लाई 380 और ओनियन 16. और ये जो फर्न है उसका नाम है ओपियोग्लोसम, ठीक है, जिसमें 1260 था. अब इससे हाफ कर देंगे तो नंबर ऑफ गैमिट्स आ जाएगा या क्रोमोसोम नंबर इन गैमिट्स आ जाएगा. ठीक है. In diploid organism, a specialized cell called meiocytes, gamete mother cell, undergo meiosis. At the end of meiosis, only one set of chromosome get incorporated in each gamete. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट जो हम लोग टॉपिक पढ़ेंगे वो है गैमेट ट्रांसफर. After the formation, male and female gametes must be physically brought together to facilitate fusion, that is fertilization. ठीक है. In majority of organisms, male gamete is motile and female gamete is stationary. Exception are few fungi and algae in which both types of gametes are motile. There is need for the medium through which the male gamete move. In several simple plants like algae, bryophytes and pteridophyte, water is the medium through which the gamete transfer takes place. A large number of male gamete, however, fail to reach the female gamete. To compensate this loss of the male gamete during the transport, the number of male gametes produced is several thousand times the number of female gamete produced. Next, page number 14. In seed plant, pollen grains are carriers of male gamete and ovule have the egg. Pollen grain produced in anther therefore have to be transferred to the stigma before it can lead to fertilization. In bisexual self-fertilizing flowers, example P, transfer of pollen grain in the stigma is relatively easy. As anther and stigma are located close to each other, pollen grains soon after they are shed come in contact with the stigma. But in cross-pollination plants, including dioecious plants, a specialized event called pollination facilitates transfer of pollen grain to the stigma. Pollen grain germinate on the stigma and the pollen tubes carrying the male gamete reach the ovule and discharge male gamete near the egg. In dioecious animals, each male and female gamete are formed in different individuals. The organism must evolve a special mechanism for gamete transfer. Successful transfer and coming together of gamete is essential for most crucial event in the sexual reproduction, the fertilization. Next topic is fertilization. The most vital event in the sexual reproduction is perhaps the fusion of gametes. This process, called syngamy, results in formation of a diploid zygote. The term fertilization is also often used for this process. The term syngamy and fertilization is frequently used, though interchangeably. What would happen if syngamy does not occur? However, it has to be mentioned that in some organisms like rotifers, honeybee and even some lizard and birds, turkey, the female gamete undergo development to form new organism without fertilization. This phenomenon is called parthenogenesis. Where does syngamy occur? In most aquatic organisms such as majority of algae and fishes as well as amphibians, syngamy occurs in the external medium. Example, outside the body of organism. This type of gametic fusion is called external fertilization. Organism exhibiting external fertilization show great synchrony between the sexes and release a large number of gamete into the surrounding medium, यानी कि water. In other in order to enhance the chance of syngamy. This happens in the bony fishes and frogs, where a large number of offspring are produced. A major disadvantage is that the offspring are extremely vulnerable to the predators, threatening their survival up to adulthood. Next, page number 15. In many terrestrial organisms belonging to fungi, higher animals such as reptiles, birds, mammals, and in majority of plants, bryophyte, pteridophyte, gymnosperm, angiosperm, syngamy occurs inside the body of organism. Hence, the process is called internal fertilization. In organisms exhibiting internal fertilization, the male gamete is motile and has to reach the egg. Number of sperm produced is very large. In seed plants, however, the non-motile male gamete are carried to female gamete by pollen tubes. Next is post-fertilization event. Event in sexual reproduction after the formation of zygote are called post-fertilization event. The zygote. Formation of the diploid zygote is universal. Okay. Zygote is universal in all sexually reproducing organisms. In organism with external fertilization, zygote is formed in the external medium, usually water, whereas those exhibiting internal fertilization, zygote is formed inside the body of organism. Further development of zygote depends on the type of the life cycle of organism has and environment it is exposed to. In organisms belonging to fungi and algae, zygote develops a thick wall that is resistant to the desiccation and damage. It undergo a period of rest before germination. In organism with haplontic life cycle, zygote divides by meiosis from haploid spore that grow into the haploid individual. Zygote is the vital link that ensures continuity of species between organism of one generation and the next. Every sexually reproducing organism, including human beings, began life as a single cell, the zygote. Next is embryogenesis. Embryogenesis refers to the process of development of embryo from the zygote. During embryogenesis, zygote undergoes cell division, that is mitosis, and cell differentiation. While cell division increases the number of cells in the developing embryo, cell differentiation helps group of cells to undergo certain modification to form specialized tissue and organ to form an organism. You have studied about the process of cell division and cell differentiation in your previous classes. Next, page number 16. Animals are categorized into oviparous and viviparous based on whether the development of zygote takes place outside the body of the female parent or inside. Example, whether they lay fertilized or unfertilized egg or give birth to young ones. In oviparous animals like reptiles, birds, the fertilized egg covered by the hard calcareous cell are laid in the safe place in the environment. After a period of incubation, young ones hatch out. On the other hand, in viviparous animals, majority of mammals, including human beings, the zygote develops into a young one inside the body of female organism. After attaining a certain age of growth, the young ones are delivered out of the body of the female organism. Because of proper embryonic care and protection, the chances of survival of the young ones is greater in viviparous organism. In flowering plant, the zygote is formed inside the ovule. After fertilization, the sepal, petal, and stamens of the flower wither and fall off. Can you name the plant in which the sepal remain attached? The pistil, however, remains attached to the plant. The zygote develops into the embryo and ovules develop into the seed. The ovary develops into the fruit, which develops a thick wall called pericarp that is protective in function. After dispersion, seeds germinate under favorable condition to produce new plants. उसके बाद एक डायग्राम दिया हुआ है जिसमें सबसे पहला जो उसमें हमको दिखाया गया है आपका सीड और पेरिकार्प. जैसे मटर का जो दाना होता है वो सीड होता है और ऊपर का जो छिलका होता है पेरिकार्प होता है. नाउ हम देख लेंगे थोड़ा इसका समरी में क्या है. रिप्रोडक्शन enables a species to live generation after generation. Reproduction in organism can be broadly classified into asexual and sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction does not involve the fusion of gametes. It is common in organisms that have relatively simple organizations such as fungi, algae, and some invertebrate. The offspring produced by asexual reproduction are identical can be referred to as clone. Zoospores, conidia, etc. Are the most common asexual structure formed in several algae and fungi. Budding and gamule formation are the common asexual methods seen in the lower organisms, animals. Prokaryotes and unicellular organisms reproduce asexually by cell division or binary fission of the parent cell. In several aquatic and terrestrial species of the angiosperm, structures such as runner, rhizome, sucker, tuber, offset, etc. are capable of giving rise to new offspring. This method of asexual reproduction is generally referred to as vegetative propagules. Sexual reproduction involves the formation and fusion of gametes. It is a complex and slower process as compared to asexual reproduction. Most of the higher animals reproduce almost entirely by sexual method. Events of sexual reproduction may be categorized into pre-fertilization, fertilization, post-fertilization events. Pre-fertilization events include gametogenesis and gamete transfer, while the post-fertilization event includes the formation of zygote and embryogenesis. Organisms may be bisexual or unisexual. Sexuality in plants is varied, particularly in angiosperm, due to the production of diverse type of flowers. Plants are defined as monoecious and dioecious. Flowers may be bisexual or unisexual. Gametes are haploid in nature and usually a direct product of meiotic division, except in haploid organism where the gametes are formed by mitosis. Transfer of male gamete is an essential event in the sexual reproduction. Is relatively easy in bisexual organisms. In unisexual organism, it occurs by copulation or simultaneous release. In angiosperm, a special process called pollination ensures transfer of pollen grain which carry the pollen grain to the stigma. Syngamy, that is fertilization, occurs between the male and the female gamete. Syngamy may occur either externally outside the body of organism or internally inside the body. Syngamy leads to the formation of a specialized cell called zygote. The process of development of embryo from zygote is called embryogenesis. In animals, the zygote start developing soon after its formation. Animals may be either oviparous or viviparous. Embryological protection and care are better in viviparous organisms. In flowering plants, after fertilization, ovary develops into fruit and ovule matures into seed. Inside the mature seed is the progenitor of the next generation, the embryo.